Hello, Mr. DeMarco. I will say you have definitely piqued my interest here, so I am going to respond. You probably don't know who I am. I'm a subscriber of yours. I comment on some of your videos, usually under a different account, but still. The question, what makes a great match, a classic match, a 5-star match? Now, this I can't say because there are a lot of factors, and I think some of it is just decided by chance into what makes a great match. But I will say, what I can say, and what I think is probably even more important, is what makes a very good match. Or rather, something that's a prerequisite for a great match, and something that makes a match that I find to be very enjoyable. Because really that's more important, isn't it? Because, I mean, the number of classic matches there are going to be is fewer than the number of very good matches you would expect. Ideally, only a few matches that exist would be truly great matches, but ideally most matches should be very good. So that's what I'm going to focus on. I hope you don't mind, because I do think it's something that needs to be addressed. I'm curious as to what other people are going to say, but what I think is that one thing that's very important for a good match is that it have a very good sort of steady pacing to it, and I'd say a flow to it, a flow throughout the entire match. And when I say pacing, I don't mean that it has to be particularly necessarily a fast pace or a slow pace, but just something steady that again has a flow to it. Flow, when I say flow, I mean that it takes the form of a logical series of events that a match, a very good match, should have to it, almost a story arc. When I say story arc, I don't mean story in the sense of a narrative, but I mean a story arc in the sense that there's exposition, which would probably come before the match, then rising action, climax, and falling action. And I guess I don't know what the falling action would be. I guess the climax is like there is no falling action, okay, but again, and then that this rising action is kind of steadily paced, and it takes certain, and almost the way that a novel would, just, or any sort of story that, again, and there are certain beats to it that are kind of spaced apart in a certain way that allows it to have this kind of a flow to it, a pacing to it, because I think really that's what's most important, isn't it? Because what you'd want to avoid in a match, what I don't look for in a match, is a match that seems to be just kind of the events of the match, the parts of the match, like let's say the big spots of the match, just kind of thrown together. Because I think what's really important is that the audience needs to, in order to get caught up in a match, in order to really enjoy a match, is to be able to suspend their disbelief. And again, that's not easy to do, but that the audience needs to believe that this is actually two people competing for a pinfall or submission or whatever the stipulation is. And again, in order to achieve that, you need to have that the match itself takes the form of a logical series of events. Logical, I think, is most important. That it's not just that the performers in the ring are doing what they're doing in order to present something that looks good, because, well, it should look good, that it's not just that they're trying to create something that looks good for most of the match, then a little bit toward the pinfall that leads up to it, and that's it. No, it's just that the entire match itself should escalate to the ending of it. That everything is in some way either an attempt to win the match on the part of the wrestlers, or an attempt to build up to something that will, in turn, win the match. Again, it's kind of hard to vocalize this, and I'd like to point to a very good example, but I don't think there's a very, very good example of this right at hand. Not that it's not present, but that's just something that makes it very clear, because, again, that's really what it comes down to. Believing that the wrestlers themselves are actually competing when they're not in real life, actually still being able to believe that, and that they are employing some sort of strategy. Because once you can follow that, that's what you follow throughout the match. Not that it's just feats of strength and acrobatics and all that stuff, but that it all means something, giving meaning to the match. And again, I don't know how clear I'm articulating myself here. I'm not sure if I'm not sure how clear this is. I hope that you understand what I'm saying. I hope I'm making this clear enough. You know, I'm trying to think of, let's say, a person, or a particular performer, wrestler, or a particular match where you could really clearly see this. And I'll have to say, that's what I like so much about someone like, let's say, Edge. Okay? His matches make sense. Okay? I'm going to point, specifically to Edge versus Batista, WWE One Night Stand 2007. Okay? I don't know why again, it's not any particular point of the match, but that the match itself is logical. Maybe it would be easier if I were to point to a match where this doesn't make sense, or a particular performer whose matches don't have this quality. Not in order to say something bad about that person, but just for contrast so that you can see what I mean. Someone like John Cena. Okay, I know that there are a lot of people who dislike him for some reason or another. I'm probably one of those people, but I'm not saying this in order to say something bad about him. I'm actually trying to make this a good example, because I think it is. John Cena's matches, specifically, let's say, for example, John Cena versus JBL at Judgment Day 2008, WWE Judgment Day. Okay, his matches, they don't have that same logic to it, because here you have a match where it's pretty much one person, let's say, dominating the match, but that the match ends by John Cena, out of nowhere, picking the guy up, flipping him onto his back, and then getting the pinfall. But when it comes out of nowhere like that, when the end of the match isn't necessarily a logical conclusion to what has been happening in the ring, but it's just something that's kind of thrown in there at the end, it doesn't have that same sense to it, and it kind of takes any sort of meaning away from what came before it. It almost kind of defeats the entire point of having the match. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's nice to see who wins, but who wins is really less important than how they win, and how they win is the match itself. Let's say maybe even in a movie. I'm going to make a comparison here. Let's say a big summer blockbuster action movie. When you see that sort of a movie, then you pretty much know how it's going to end. You know that the good guys are going to win and that they're going to beat up the bad guys and whatever. You know that's going to happen because it's that kind of a movie. That's what you're expecting. So that's not why you're going to see the movie. You're not sitting through the movie in suspense wondering who's going to come out on top, who's going to survive, is the world going to end, or is the world going to be saved? No, you don't care about that. What you care is how it happens, and that's where the emphasis lies. Again, I don't think this is the sort of thing that you could actually point to one thing and say, okay, this is what so-and-so is doing specifically that gives the matches this quality, and this is what so-and-so isn't doing and he needs to do this, and then the match will have this quality. This is just a very vague, not vague, but I guess kind of vague, broad interpretation of a quality that I think very good matches have to have. And that great matches definitely have to have. Again, I don't know how much sense this would make to you, Mr. DeMarco, as a wrestler yourself, because I don't think it's really that simple, but maybe, this is just as a wrestling fan, this is my own view. And I think I'm running out of time here, so I would like to get into answering your second question, but I don't have any time. It would take too long, and I don't have time on this video, because if I go over 11 minutes, I get just cut off. So, I mean, YouTube won't let me upload it, so, maybe I'll make a separate video for that. Okay, and really, thank you for asking this question. I think I'd be interested to see what other people say. Okay, good day.